Welcome back, Dolphins. I want to talk about Jonah. Jonah Savaiinaea. I think it's pretty incredible, and I think when I'm watching the film right now, it's just one of those things that this further pushes my oomph for keeping Mike McDaniel. Because when you look at a guy like this, Jonah Savaiinaea, we all had high hopes coming into the season. We all were like, dude, we got an offensive lineman finally in the NFL draft, and it's just like, it's beautiful. We're finally going to have something. And then, of course, James Daniels goes down, and so does Austin Jackson. And then, it made it a lot tougher, I think, for a rookie to come in here when you don't have a completely solid offensive line and the other guys are struggling, and then you pretty much are on the side of two good players, and you're a rookie, you're making mistakes. It just didn't help that we also had the right side of the line making a lot of mistakes as well when all this kind of happened. So the spotlight was on Jonah because Keon Smith and, Larry Bourne, even though he started playing well, none of those guys really were supposed to do well. It was just Jonah. So when we started seeing Jonah really struggling, it led to a lot of emotions. It led to a lot of things. And me watching the film right now, I got to give some props to Jonah and how he's, gone through it. Most people, you get into the NFL, there's been plenty of wide receivers and quarterbacks and stuff like that you get in the NFL, it starts horrible. Like it's a struggle bus city. And you've seen a lot of players and just men in general that kind of fall and don't ever get back up and end up, commentating or something like that. But Jonah going through the ringer, it has been impressive. It's been one of those things that weaker men would have just completely given up. I think we can refer back to Jonathan Martin or Martin. I forgot the guy that was with, Richie Incognito and all that. Lesser people would have given up. They would have, just kept failing until they failed out of the league, and that's it. And with Jonah right now, it has been very impressive to see a young rookie that was, we almost thought that he was worse than Liam Eichenberg at a certain point, kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting and kept trying to get better and kept fighting. And we've gotten to a point now where he's a serviceable starter. Like, you can keep him on the field. Like, you're not looking at Jonah anymore. And one of the quotes that I think one of the coaches said was it showed you how good the coaching can be. As he was like, Jonah's a rookie. He's going to make 6 mistakes. But we hope that next week maybe he makes 5 really bad mistakes. And then the week after that, really 4. And really, it's kind of how it's gone. He would make a certain amount of mistakes, and then each week he would still make mistakes, but he would lessen the amount of mistakes. And it's gotten to a point now where, one of the singular touchdown that we had with Devon Achane, the run, that was because of Jonah. He basically blocked his guy went around, and then he completely came back around and blocked him out of the hole, and Devon just took off towards the end zone. That was Jonah's block that sprung that, and it's happened a couple times in the Washington game, in this game. It's happened a couple times where Jonah has made the block to have Devon spring for the end zone. And I am excited for this because, obviously, like 6 weeks into the season, we all thought that we had just wasted a draft pick on Jonah, and it was looking rough. But you gotta appreciate the heart in this kid, and that he kept fighting to get to a point where he could be good in this league. And I'll make a video about Kenneth Grant as well. But again, Jonah's starting to become not just a serviceable starter, but if he keeps improving like this, because this is 8 games, or not 8 games, this is what we are, 6 and 7, so 13 games. And he's made this much improvement. I can't imagine a whole offseason, under the regime right now. And, continuing to grow in the offense and continuing to hone his craft, because Butch Barry is another really good coach. I can't imagine what he's going to turn into. Right now, he's starting to turn into a really, really good blocker. And he has the thing is, with Liam, I think some people used to refer him as the new Liam or whatever it is. The problem with Liam is, and it was said in the draft, is that his arms were slightly shorter than most of the offensive linemen's arms. Like his length wasn't as good, which obviously is a really hard trait to overcome as an offensive lineman because you have to get your arms out. And it was one of those things that it just his measurables were a little bit weird, even though he was good in college at Notre Dame. Whereas Jonah, he's a much bigger player. Like Jonah is a bigger, sturdier player than Liam was. And honestly, Liam, he turned into someone that was serviceable. It's not like he was a complete bust. It's just towards the end of when he was playing through a bunch of injuries, and it was just tough on him. But when he was not injured, he definitely looked like a startable player. Like you could keep him on the field. Whereas Jonah, he has such an upside right now, along with Kenneth Grant. I was watching one of the podcasts where they were talking about the different rookies, and the thing is, right now, some of the rookies that we have, like Jordan Phillips and all that, they're doing their role well. But with Jonah and with Kenneth Grant, the upside is so far above what you can see. And people tend to forget, when Patrick Paul was in last year, which Patrick Paul has looked like an all-world player, when he was in last year for Teron Armstead, it was iffy. Like, we weren't like, oh, Patrick Paul's the man. He had a lot of struggles. Like, he just didn't look fully 100% what he is right now. There were some plus plays, but, he didn't look fully like he did right now. And that's why I'm so excited for Jonah, because you can see if Patrick Paul can come in last year and he can develop the way that he did in 1 year, Jonah's starting to show traits where, similarly to Patrick Paul, you give him another offseason and you keep Brew, that left side is great. Austin Jackson on that right tackle. And me personally, I would say you have James Daniels for 2 years. Keep him. Don't get rid of James Daniels. You got him for like $16 million. You got him for cheap. Some people want to cut him. I don't say cut him. You have him for 2 years. If you can, just think of this, because honestly, right now it's already looking pretty good. The run game we have, you have next year Patrick, Jonah, Brew, James Daniels, or substitute anybody in there. Austin Jackson again next year. You keep Liam Eichenberg, Andrew Meyer, and Larry Borum. You know what I'm saying? Like, you keep that right side of the offensive line there, and then you just sign a couple backups. Dude, you got one of the best offensive lines in the league. Like, real stuff. If James Daniels doesn't go down and Austin Jackson stays healthy, you have one of the best offensive lines, and that's why you keep Larry Borum and Liam Eichenberg, because even if they go down, you still have backups that can come in and contribute. So back to Jonah. I think, really, you got to watch him in game. Jonah's becoming kind of a low-key beast. Like, he is really starting to get it. He's starting to be able to put hands on people and not be just confused about the play, because the reality was he wasn't, he was getting pushed around, but it was mostly because he just didn't understand what he needed to do on plays. When you watch this film, he just looked like very confused out there. Like, he didn't know who to get. And, if you're indecisive as an offensive lineman, you're going to get pushed back by these big dudes, especially as a rookie, where now he's understanding who he needs to go for, where he needs to move, if he needs to cut upfield. He understands exactly where to go. And I think as we develop into this season, regardless of what happens with the playoffs, I think the development of Jonah has been substantial. I think his heart to get better has been impressive. And I think we definitely got a steal in most of all of the rookies that we have right now have been steals. Jonah's going to be another one of those where I think he can develop into someone that him and Patrick Paul on that left side of the line can be phenomenal, and whether we keep, Tua's blind side as the right side, you keep Tua, or if not, you then have your complete blind side covered for you end up getting another quarterback. It depends on what they want to do, but I think Jonah has become substantially better, and I think he can turn into a really great offensive lineman. You keep continuing of the coaching of him, and then him and Patrick Paul will be a staple for years, along with Aaron Brewer. They'll be a staple. They'll be something that for a long time the offensive line for the Miami Dolphins, not just with this coaching staff, but like forever. Like it's been since we had that no-name offensive line back in the day with Incognito and Pouncey and all them. It's been a minute since you had like a decent offensive line, and the building blocks are there right now. I think you have Austin Jackson under contract. You have James Daniels under contract. You don't need to cut these people. It would make no sense. Like I wouldn't see the reason to cut these people. They've developed under your tenure, and you have them under contract. There's no reason to cut them to have to find other offensive linemen. I can see, depending on what we do this year, I mean, you go into next year with all of these guys, and then you just have to fill in the holes behind them. You're developing an offensive line that can be pretty impressive, and it starts with Jonah. And I think he's really showing that we made an impressive pick on him, and he can turn into something. And it's another credit to Mike McDaniel that every time he picks an offensive player, he kind of turns them into something, usable. He turns them into something. I think we have to take a step back and see that. Because like I said, Jonah's starting to become a serviceable starter, like a good starter. I think he can develop into a strong player on this offensive line. But let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. As always, guys, fins up, baby. Love you all. Peace.